Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Victoria Brinman, and I'm here with Randy. Randy, how are you?
I am great, thank you. Getting through the heat.
I know. It is so hot here. You could tell I'm wearing my tank top. It's like very, very warm here in New York. I'm so excited that we're actually having this conversation. We actually spent the last hour together just talking and working on things. So this is a continuation for me of how much I love talking with you about things that matter.
Yes, me as well.
So today we're actually talking about, and we'll wait for people to join, because this is an important topic. I really, really love it. And it's how does identifying feelings help build self-awareness for kiddos, right?
Right.
And so what do you think about this? I have so much to say, but what are your thoughts about self-awareness and the importance of identifying feelings?
Yes, so I think it's an excellent question, because what we often think is that children may not necessarily have an advanced way of thinking to be able to have self-awareness. But self-awareness is really a key to development, and even little kiddos can actually develop that if they understand what it is that they're feeling. No, feelings are very complex and complicated. It's not just I'm happy or sad. It used to be with little ones, we would say happy, sad, mad, glad, or something like that, and that would be it. But it's much deeper than, and it's so important for kids.
Yeah. So when I think about this, I'm thinking of like deconstructing this topic for ourselves and for others, because it's such a big one. So I actually want to go like over this question, identifying feelings, right? I just want to say that even inside of adult conversation, and I'm a pretty aware person, you're a pretty aware person, identifying how we feel in a certain moment is not so, linear. And so just being compassionate, and I say this often, just being compassionate with our younger ones, because their ability to conceptualize, go deep, like really identify what's going on in the moment is way more limited, right? Because of many different reasons, structurally, neurologically, they're not there yet. So just that is, a big feat. And then self-awareness and the importance of it. We know that self-awareness leads to good decision-making. Self-awareness leads to good self-advocacy. Self-awareness leads to confidence of self, right? So now what we're saying with this is being able to identify what's happening for me, right, helps me build self-awareness of what's going on for me in this moment, in this relationship, why I'm being reactive, why I'm being quiet, all of these different things. And so this is the question, how do we help kids identify a feeling? Like, what are some ways that you do it? And I'll share some ways that I do it. But where do we even begin?
Right. So, I always think it's a really good question, because the beginning point is often, in this case, is very critical, because we talk a lot about literacy skills for children, right? That's kind of the buzzwords these days. Everyone wants to teach kids how to read when they're in nursery school. Literacy teaching is happening earlier. I think about it as having a feelings vocabulary and having a feelings literacy. Right? Because children don't have an advanced understanding of feelings, as we said. They're not neurologically developed enough to really have that. And the more you use words of varied feelings with giving explanations around it, or with them or about yourself, starts to build that vocabulary and understanding, where even a 2-year-old can start to really understand.
Got it. So one of the tips is to yourself have conversation and use language to model.
Yes.
Got it. That's a very important piece that we sometimes forget. Like, we are the best tools that we've got to
Exactly.
help kids see that. Okay, I got it. So, and what are the situations that would call for us to help kids start verbalizing their own feelings? Like, how would we do that with a child? I work with a lot of parents who will say, well, I will say, how was school? Great. How did you feel about, the first day? Fine.
Fine. Right.
Right. And it drives parents nuts, because we are used to more elaborate responses. We're used to this back and forth kind of, conversation. So where does a parent in that situation go? Like, what's next? What do you think?
Right. So I think there's two pieces. One is when you're having just a regular conversation with your kids, sometimes a good thing to do is you start off the conversation about sharing about a detail of something that you experienced in your day, that includes a feeling. That's starting to give children a sense of what it is you might be looking for. And so we end up asking more clothes, like, how was your day? Fine. Most kids will say, so sometimes you can give questions that are like, what did you like doing today? What was fun that you did today? Giving a little more color to give them a sense of what you're looking for. Like, I have with my son, we have gratefuls that we talk about, and we also have disgratefuls, he calls them.
Oh, because that's fun.
Yeah. So what we do is I say, well, what are you grateful for today? And the first time, when he said to me, but I have a disgrateful, my knee-jerk reaction was to be like, no, we don't want to hear disgratefuls, And I was like, no, that's entitled. He doesn't have to be thrilled about everything. So that's sort of how you get into a conversation. And that leads to a little bit more of emotional development and feelings, because when you're grateful for something, then you say, wow, so it sounds like you were really happy about that. Right? Or you were excited when that happened. Versus a disgrateful, you let's say they give you whatever the story was, and you say, that sounds like that was hard, and that could have been a little bit upsetting. What you do.
I love what you're talking about, Randy. Somebody's coming up to, in mind, and she's a parent that often watches these lives with you and I. And so maybe it'll, relate for other people as well. So many times, kids come to us with things and we don't really know what we want to do. And what I hear often is, I just want to fix it. Like, they're not happy, so I want to fix the problem. But if we kind of change our frame of mind, and I'll give you the example and we can kind of talk about it, and I would love to hear what you think. So this is a beautiful little girl who has an awesome family. Both parents are divorced, and there's a lot of transitions. Pandemic, one of the parents had a new baby in the house, other siblings going on with another parent. So lots of transitions and lots of changes. And what's happening is she's having trouble separating every time she shifts from one household to another. And so the desire is to, how do we fix this? And the response I have is, there's nothing so much to fix, because this is the experience this child is having. What we can do is support them by identifying almost for them what we see, to validate, almost like, it must be so hard to leave
going back and forth
and have your siblings stay and you have to go. It must be difficult to kind of bounce back and forth and have your stuff in two different places. And so what we're doing as adults is we're identifying for them based on what we can see, right? And almost asking a question. It must be hard, or it must be, you must be sad about that, right? Right. And then the child will say, yeah, or, well, and and then they'll, continue.
Right. They'll usually tell you if you're wrong. And that's what I love
100%.
about kids. Yes.
100%. So what do you think about that? Like, do you have those kinds of conversations with your kids where sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to fix this for them, but then it's really more about helping them identify what's going on for them?
Yes. So I think in general, we make jokes about, there's sometimes jokes about helicopter parenting, wanting to swoop down and fix everything. But the truth is most parents do want to fix things for their children. They want it to be better. They want them not to struggle. And especially when there's divorce and separation and things like that, there's even more often, there's a greater desire to do that. And I think what we do is when we I think of ourselves as reporters to kids, like, if there's something going on and they the newscaster will be telling you about it, and they'll say, we're going to tune in to so-and-so who's right on site and going to tell us what's going on right there. And they say, so how's it going? What do you see happening? That's really our role, I think, in those situations, is sort of being that on-site reporter to sort of say, I'm gathering information based on what you're presenting. I'm going to use some words that are going to be clues for you, that I'm starting to understand you, to help you start to understand yourself better. That's kind of what we're doing by asking questions and allowing them to be in a, thinking that they're struggling with something, because they're going to, like I said before, they're going to let us know if you're like totally off. And there you can also use humor, because you can also, if depending on the child, you can be silly about something. Or say it in a silly way, which sort of gets them to also see that sometimes feelings can be a lot and complicated, and we can laugh about them too, as we try to figure out how to deal with them.
I love that. I like that a lot. And I guess what I'm hearing you say is also being more gentle with ourselves and kind of taking a step back and not feeling so much like we have to fix something that feels uncomfortable. Right. And what we can do is just help them through almost just saying how they feel and what's there for them. And that is actually what is called for in those moments.
Right. And that does build the self-awareness, because what you're doing in those moments is, a lot of times also, sometimes when kids are upset about something, parents will either want to deflect and just say, here, take the whatever you wanted and go watch something, or here's my phone, or stop crying, you'll be fine, don't let anything get you down. And those are sometimes, again, still trying to fix. And that's sort of saying there isn't a space for feelings here. So the idea is for us to talk about our feelings, to ask about or speculate for them what their feelings could be, which gives a message. I want to hear about your feelings, and I want to help you figure out what they are, because this can be confusing. And saying that as an adult, saying, this and this happened today, and I really had to stop myself to say, hold on a minute, like that was so challenging for me, and that was okay. And sort of also, again, that's the modeling that you had mentioned that I was speaking about. There's so much. And you know what, Victoria, we at that time are building our own self-awareness as we're doing that with our kiddos. And that is really a wonderful exchange.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, and the importance of, when a child says something to us. Oh, we both have our water. I love it.
Yes. Gotta hydrate.
Keep hydrated. Yeah. So I love that you brought that up, because we do often like to, and we think we're being helpful, and we do this to each other as friends and partners. And we say, oh, you'll be fine. Oh, no, you don't. It's okay. I had this conversation on a live very recently, because I hear it so much. And what ends up happening when we do those things is we lose the opportunity to actually show up and create those moments where we do help kids build self-awareness. And so that, with what you just said, comes from our own discomfort of dealing with our own feelings. Like, we don't want to see, I want to be compassionate towards parents because it's hard to see a kid feel upset. All you want to do is make it go away. You don't always want to focus on them being upset or uncovering it. So you have to almost go through your own process of getting yourself to a place where you can explore and help a child, find their way through how they feel. So it's a lot of work.
Right.
It's a lot of
It is. And I think we often are thinking about the judgment of other people in those moments, of someone else who might be, I often hear this from parents, my child was having a tantrum in the middle of the store. I was so embarrassed that I just said, stop crying, and I just, those kind of moments also. And especially if it's uncomfortable for us, we often, and I think in general, there's a lot of stop, stop the feelings, just move on, let's be tough kind of thing. And that in the end does not really allow self-awareness to develop, because you don't really know what your feelings are, because you don't really have space to talk about it. And one of the things, you mentioned earlier, it helps with problem solving. It helps us build relationships, and it helps us build our own sense of self. So it's really important to be able to have a space for feelings that don't necessarily need to be fixed per se, but that there's a discussion about them so that we can evolve together and learn how to deal with them. That's the benefit of self-awareness, is saying, I'm excited about something. Well, I could be jumping up and down, yelling and screaming, where everybody else is kind of not in the same place. What do we do in those moments? It's not even when we're struggling with things. I think that's also what people forget. Sometimes it's in good moments where we still need some direction, be mindfulness about something. And we sometimes miss those opportunities because those seem easier.
Yeah. So I love this conversation because it's bringing about a lot of instances where, when I meet with parents, it's already at that point where frustration has built up so much, and there's a lack of language and communication around feelings. And so now there's a standstill and a stagnation and a frustration and anger and all of these things that are happening. So I guess my one tip for parents is starting really young and thinking about these things from a proactive place. So even parents who are watching this who don't have kids yet, and you're just about to have your first, thinking about, these are things that we do to help children grow and develop. These aren't just things that, come up, right? So it's a skill that we learn to identify feelings and to build self-awareness. So we can start doing that as adults right now.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I want to kind of, ask you is, for parents who already have kids who are struggling and they haven't done that work, that modeling, it's new to them.
Right.
What's a nice gateway entrance into it? What are some tips that we can give, maybe 2 or 3, for parents who are just starting this journey of pulling back? I'm not going to fix, but now what? Right. How do I tolerate this?
Right. So one of the things that we've talked about many times is the importance of the breath, because I think when you're changing the way you've done something, typically what happens is there's often reactions from everybody because we're not used to that. So it could feel uncomfortable as the parent to now sort of take a moment and let the feelings present, right? But it's also taking a breath and saying, okay, we can do this. We'll figure something out. And I do think it's still a problem-solving mindset. So that's what I wanted to mention, that a tip is saying we're problem-solving. We're not solving the problem that it's finished. right? We're problem solving. It's a process. We're not finished. We didn't problem solve and we're done. So if we go into it with the mindset of, I'm not trying to fix, but I'm trying to, you know, kind of like the image that just came up for me is like, if you're on a road trip with a car, you might want to check in and check all aspects of your car beforehand, making sure you have enough air in the tires, you know, that is not in and of itself solving your whole need for your road trip. That's only one piece, right? You have to look at all parts of the car before to make sure your car is up and running for a big trip. You want to make sure there's enough Freon for the air conditioning. So same idea, that when we have a child who comes to us with some big feelings and we want to address it without fixing, it's about kind of saying there's so many layers to this. I can't fix that just yet. I have to see what's this piece. Let's start somewhere.
That's a really that's a great tip for people. It's just thinking about starting small and not, I'm distracted by the big feelings Van is having behind me.
Yes.
But a good tip is starting small, like you said. And, you know, when a kid does bring big feelings, if we're unaware of our own feelings at times, that could be like overwhelming. And all we want to do is kind of like, oh, this is too much. Let's just shut it down.
Right.
So what you're saying, and I like this, is start small. And just, you know, we're problem solving. It's a process. It's actually a developmental process throughout life.
Right. And we're building skills now. So let's skill build.
It's skill building. And would you say that what a parent can do is ask a curious question? Like I often talk to parents about mindset, and here a curious mindset, a mindset of curiosity. I wonder what this is about. Like, let's look together, almost like a detective, right? Like, right? Like we're in this together. It's not like a you problem. You're sad. No, you're not. Like, get over it. It's like, ooh, yeah. Let's do this together. Like, we're sad, right? Like you and me. I like that.
So Victoria, and I like that you mentioned that, because I actually think that's the second tip that I would zero in on, is that it's a partnership. When your child is coming to you with big feelings about something, just like you said before, they're not at us. Even if they're older, they're not, what's the word? It's not that they're not capable. It's more that they want support to deal with it. They're coming to you. And I kind of think of it like, I always have this little magnifying glass here. I keep it by my desk because it reminds me that sometimes if you want to show somebody something and they're having a hard time seeing, you say, oh, let's look at it a little more closely. And you both kind of go in and try to see the magnifying glass. That's what it is. It's like you're with your kiddo and you're saying, oh, are just so overwhelmed. What happened? Something like that. And be a partner in the investigation about it, and just trying to have a dialogue, not fixing per se. Again,
I love that. I love that so much. And a lot of it, you know, again, and we have these conversations, and it always comes back to, at some point, it starts with us as the adults. And the awareness, and, you know, when we're talking about confident parents, the confidence also, right, is in, I got this, right? But not that I know or should have all the answers. Right. But I can be an expert companion here to my child, and we can do this together, and I'm a guide. I don't have all the answers. I never will have all the answers.
That's right.
But I'm a guide, and I can kind of be in this with my child, and we can kind of, you know, use this. Like, I'll say to parents, oh my gosh, what a fun opportunity that you have. And they'll say, but this was a terrible tantrum, or I didn't know what to say. And I'm like, yeah. And how great, because don't you want a kid that's developing? And thank goodness that there's this opportunity where you can use it to help them develop, right? Because without contrast, without those challenges, without those big feelings, we've got nothing to work with.
That's right. That's nothing, right. And that's right? % true, because it's always about channeling the energy from the challenge into an opportunity, because we would not prefer that our kids don't tell us anything. That's much harder, because like you said, we don't have anything to go with. So if we open ourselves up to say, I can talk about feelings, I don't have to have all the answers, and I can even say something that may sound crazy, but I'm a work in progress, just like my child is. That I think is so important. We are all works in progress, and kiddos need our experience to regulate, to co-learn in these moments. It's not meant that either of us should be on our own trying to do it, that you just have to say, well, I should know what to do. So, and since I can't, again, it's more gentle for both sides. It's so humbling to be able to think, to utilize it that way, that it's a real opportunity for yourself to grow as a parent.
Yeah, it's a co-creation, so to speak, and doing it together, and not having a direct path, but just having the confidence that this is it. This is the experience of parent. Like, we often talk about there's parenting skills and strategies, but then there's the parenthood experience, and it's part of the parenthood experience. You're not supposed to have all the answers. You're just supposed to be open to and confident that the answers will come, right? It's just a matter of being alongside it for the journey and the process. So I love that so much. And the other last thing that I wanted to say, and definitely if you have more thoughts, Randy, is being able to, and I share this with parents often, and so important, the idea of self-awareness and identifying your own feelings taps right into children's ability to empathize. A lot of times we have kiddos who have a hard time seeing another person's point of view. And parents will say, or teachers I work with will say, like, I'm not sure about this child, or many kids, like, they don't know how to empathize. They can't see outside of themselves. And I will often say, well, because what is empathy? We first have to be able to see our own experience and identify all these things so that we can see it in another. And so the importance of this is monumental. It's very significant. It's not just about the child's experience of their own life, but their ability to relate later on to others, to be able to recognize what another person may need. But that first has to start over here. What do you think about that?
Yes. So actually, that was one of the things that I was thinking about in advance of our speaking today, was that the self-awareness for me, is sort of my bridge to the social awareness, to starting to understand what it could be like for other children. So for example, and this is something that I often do, especially in the classroom, and I talk to teachers about this also, is when children stop and notice another child having a hard time, let's say, for example, it's not just talking to the child who's having the hard time in that moment. It's also using that as an opportunity to say to the other children, oh, it looks like, I just can't think of a name for the moment. Sam is really frustrated right now, and we've got to figure out how to figure out what is going on for him. And it's saying, and then you also acknowledging that piece, and that's been the child who maybe did something to someone else. But it's starting, if we talk about what we notice in other people in a caring and considerate way, we are giving our children an unbelievable opportunity to start to understand that other people have these kinds of feelings too. And they haven't figured out yet what to do about it. And that's okay. And then that builds their own self-awareness back in return. And I think, Victoria, it ends up being sort of an ongoing loop, which is really magnificent.
Yes. And it's not like there's an answer for this, more so than let's look and be curious together. And it provides this opportunity for kids to say, I don't know what the answer is or why this person is feeling this way, but I can get curious and I can kind of look over here and say, have I ever felt or, look, and what was there for me? And I love that, because then there's a discovery. There's a world of discovery there versus this.
And that brings the empathy, Victoria, also, because if you don't know, you can still be caring and show care to somebody.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Like, I don't need to know in order to show that I care, that I'm curious, that I want to understand. I love that so much, because that is what relationships are built on. It's not like I have the answer for you, right? Oh, what a beautiful note to sort of wrap up on. This is a really great conversation, Randy. What did you think? What do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel like it's a great point, whether all of the whole conversation, we shared things that are really good if you're starting out to think about talking about feelings with a younger child, but there's also a lot that we can do if we haven't already done that. Because it's never too late to build on our own self-awareness, which can help us in how we relate to others. And it just builds, everything builds. There's so much that can kind of be added on that brings so much good to our interactions. And we certainly need that. So I think there's some really good strategies that we brought to the forefront today.
Yeah. And if anyone, has any questions or anything like that, if you're watching the replay, let us know what your questions are. And if you are curious about what it would look like to work with either one of us, please do reach out. And I will say happy 4th of July weekend for those of you in the US. It'll be, I think, a rainy weekend here in New York, but to be honest with you, I'm open to that after this heat wave.
Yes, I think we all need it.
Yeah.
It's been so humid and hot. Yeah.
It has been so hot. Keep hydrated. And Randy, do we have any set up, or do we have to set up more? Yes, we do. The next time
think we have one. We do.
Yep, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard on July 15th. So we'll see everyone back here for another amazing conversation. And Randy, you take care, and we'll see everyone soon.